Okay, cool. Hi, everyone. We are back with our Tuesday Talks with I Thrive, and today I'm here with Ria Jain, who is the head of the I Thrive Academy. And we are here to share our knowledge on the gut brain connection. Because despite, like, sometimes we think everyone knows about it, but yet when we do consults, when we talk to people, people come to us with so many disease conditions, right? Like autoimmune diseases, even things like migraine, weight issues, and all. We realize that this common knowledge of, I mean, what we think is common knowledge is really not common. So we just thought we'll come and talk about our experiences, our learning, and share what we know about the gut brain connection. Mostly it's going to be Ria who's going to do the talking. I'm just going to ask her questions. um, because you also teach this module in the
Yes, I
academy, right?
teach this gut microbiome module. Yes.
Yeah, she teaches the gut microbiome module in the academy, and she really knows, right, what happens, what are the kind of things that can go wrong, and how it can impact the brain. And if we have time, maybe I will talk of a couple of cases that we worked on. But let's get started, Ria. Right? So,
Yes, all right.
for people who are watching this for the first time, like again, because of the work we do, we think everyone knows about the jargon that we use, right? But what is the gut brain connection? Like, what is the gut brain axis itself? If you can explain that.
Yes. So the gut brain axis. So we keep on hearing about it, and it was one of the first connections that even I had heard back when I had passed out, that there's a connection between your gut and the brain. Not much about it was even discussed then, and I even did not read about it. I just knew that there's a connection between the gut and the brain, but then it's also equally important to understand how is the gut and how are these two organs connected to each other. So if we say that there's an axis that is made, we need to know that the first thing, that it's a bidirectional connection. All right. So the gut is connected to your brain via neurons. Okay. So uh, if we talk about our physiology, the body physiology, we have two brains. One is the brain that is situated in the central nervous system, the part of the central nervous system that we know of. The other brain is our gut. So why is the gut called as the second brain? Again, explains this axis. So this second brain is probably because of the presence of neurons. So these neurons, which are typically present in abundant numbers in your central nervous system, which are the functional units of our brain, basically, this is how, with the help of neurons, our brain functions, right? So there is presence of almost 500 million neurons also in your gut. So this is how, making a nerve. So there's a nerve that innervates from your colon, that is your large intestine, that connects your gut to your brain, and this nerve is called the vagus nerve. And that is how a connection is made between the gut and the brain. And as I mentioned, that is a bidirectional connection. Bidirectional meaning signals are sent both ways. So your gut communicates to your brain, and your brain also communicates to your gut via this axis, via this nerve. So when I say axis, or when we talk about the gut brain axis, the main thing that needs to be focused on is the connection, the vagus nerve, and the presence of these 500 million neurons, which literally makes our gut our second brain. And this all makes up the enteric nervous system, that is the nervous system in our gut itself. So that's for people who are new to the gut brain axis.
In fact, when I teach the mind body medicine module, right, we speak of, like, we talk about stress, and then we talk of how to kind of have systems and processes and tools and techniques to help people with their stress. And there is this new, like, it's not new, it's been there for a while, but it's something that I learned recently. So we talk of something called as polyvagal theory, and
Hmm.
how polyvagal systems can be
Stimulation.
used for calming the stress response itself, right? And imagine that there's one nerve going through your body. It's running from your colon, which is like the absolute almost end of your digestive system.
System, yes.
That nerve, if you use that nerve's activation, you can actually help someone deal with things like depression and anxiety, and like extreme mental emotional health issues can be dealt with just this nerve that's residing and connecting your gut to your brain. So
Absolutely. So if you think about it, the polyvagal therapy that you just mentioned, so a lot also has to do with, how is the communication between your gut and the brain. So if your gut health is impacted in ways that we'll of course discuss going ahead, So
Right.
the PA axis also gets disturbed, and this is what leads to, a lot leads to increased production of cortisol, and that you again, messes up with a lot of things. And as you rightly said, just activating this particular part and taking care of this nerve can help you get rid of so many other issues.
And that's the thing, right? Like, so even initially, long ago, when I used to do probiotics, I thought the vagus nerve was just this gut brain axis. Like, vagus nerve is calling up the brain is like sending communication, and the reverse is happening. But it turns out it's not even that. Like, the vagus nerve is linked to your entire nervous system. So it becomes so much more important then to take care of your gut, because your entire nervous system, the entire cascade of how you're feeling, and then how you're doing the things in your life, how are you waking up, how are you going to bed, all of that is dependent on the health of that vagus nerve itself to a large degree.
Yes, yes,
So
absolutely. So not always these symptoms of anxiety, depression, and stress are because of situations that have gone wrong in your life. Most of it also has to do with impacted gut health. So if your gut health is impacted, the microbiome. So that brings us to the next point for discussion. That, like, how are these neurons actually residing in our
right. So how is
in
the gut really connected to the brain?
connected to the brain, and like how is it helping your brain be at a state of calm? So it is because of the, again, presence of these microbes. So these microbes are, again, talking about the gut microbiome. So there's a community of trillions of microorganisms, especially bacteria, that reside in our gastrointestinal tract. So different numbers in the different organs of the gastrointestinal tract. Mainly, abundantly, these bacteria, they reside in your colon, that is your large intestine. That is where, again, there is huge numbers of neurons present, and that is where also the vagus nerve sends signals and communicates with your brain. So it is because of these microbes that your gut can help keep your brain in a state of calm, and the other symptoms and the neuropsychiatric problems that we suffer from. So a lot of things come out of it. Talking about the first thing, these microbes help in the production of neurotransmitters. So these
Right.
neurotransmitters are chemical messengers across the body that help in a lot of things, may it be your mood, or your digestion, your movement, how you behave overall.
And I think to a degree they're also connected to the leptin ghrelin response, right? Like
Yes,
the
yes, that
hunger.
too. That too. Your microbes, that is these bacterial colonies, also determine your hormonal responses. Basically, also these two, the ghrelin and the leptin. So if your microbes again get disturbed, your ghrelin leptin balance gets disturbed, and that is where you don't have a control over your eating. So you end up
And
overeating.
I think it's not even just microbes, right? Like we've seen even with parasitic infections, in like colonic, these worms, right? Like
Yes,
hookworms and all, the hunger signaling is way off, and insatiable appetite is there. And I think like it's through this entire communication system. So our gut has viruses, it has bacteria, it has fungi, it
exactly.
has these worms, parasites, so many things. And if one of them also is a little off, it just messes up the
It's a
entire chain of communication in the
ecosystem.
body.
Yes, it does messes up with the entire ecosystem. And yeah, so you're talking about the neurons, right? So the main neurotransmitter that these microbes they help in producing are serotonin, there's dopamine, and there's GABA. Uh, GABA is especially important when it comes to uh, it is basically a neuro. So there are excitatory neurons and there are inhibitory
Hmm.
neurons. So both of them have a balance. Your brain, our activities are not always excitatory. There has to be a inhibition. So GABA helps in the inhibition part of it. So if GABA is not produced, again here, because of impaired gut health, then it can lead to a disease called epilepsy. So even epilepsy has got a lot to do with impaired gut health. And if you focus on improving the gut health and finding out what is wrong with the gut, so we'll again, going ahead, discuss about what can go wrong with the gut that makes you show symptoms of brain changes. So that's about GABA, and then serotonin and dopamine. So dopamine again is a very important neurotransmitter. If the product 50% of the production of dopamine and serotonin is via your gut microbes. So your microbial health, these tiny little living beings are really important when it comes to your overall health also. So
And
that's
we
about
wouldn't even have imagined it, right? Like,
we take them for granted, literally, Mugdha. We take them for granted. They have coexisted with us, co-evolved with us, and still we do very little for them when it comes to choosing right foods and keeping their health good. But
so now that you've spoken about food, na, I also want to kind of bring a little attention to how some foods can then, through the gut, actually trigger different things in the
yes,
brain, right? So could you
yes.
then talk about that as well?
Yeah, I can throw some light on it. So, when it comes to foods, so if you are into a lot of foods called as inflammatory foods, so if you are someone who's been consuming gluten their entire life, who is eating sugar their entire life, right? These are like potent inflammatory molecules. Of course, not to forget the vegetable and seed oils. These are
Right.
pro-inflammatory substances, right? All of these, they increase inflammation in your body to an extent that these microbial communities, they get destroyed, and there's a lot of gut inflammation. This gut inflammation in turn sends inflammatory signals, induces inflammatory signals, and sends inflammatory signals along this axis, which further leads to neuroinflammation.
Right.
Neuroinflammation is inflammation in the brain area.
Brain itself.
So if there is inflammation in the brain area, a lot of changes again come with it. Like there can be oxidative stress that can get generated. There can be increased amount of free radical activity that can that can happen there. This again is an invitation for a disease called as Alzheimer's, because for Alzheimer's the connection is quite clear here. Because of the gut inflammation, there was neuroinflammation, and that is one of the reasons why
I think
people.
even in autism, we've seen this, right? With a lot of
Yes,
our
yes.
autism cases that we worked, even before we actually finish off with the advanced test, like before the OAT test results come and before the
Hmm.
GI map results come, just eliminating inflammatory food from those kids' diets brings about such a big behavioral change. And usually, the kids we work with, for those of you watching, some of the kids on the spectrum are very young, right? So they might mostly be non-verbal. They are not really able to communicate what's happening within. And the only way their parents actually know whether they're progressing or regressing is through their behavior. And like every single time we've seen this, that when we eliminate these big four, five known inflammatory foods, right? Which is gluten, and then foods that are very high in compounds like lectins, like plant anti-nutrients, and then seed oils, sugar, processed food like biscuits and like whatever normally is fed to kids.
And also packaged pasteurized dairy
Yeah,
products.
packaged dairy. Some kids are actually lactose intolerant and they're not even able to
Yes.
communicate the discomfort and the gas that they experience in their stomach. So, just eliminating these inflammatory foods as the first step brings about a turnaround in their behavior and sleep patterns and all of that. So, it's really important. So, the microbiome, yes, super critical. And if it's really messed up, like if you're having too many gut issues, then a really good thing would be to kind of get it assessed and get tests done and all that. But food is something that you can like literally do easily, right? Like just eliminate these foods and see the impact it has, and it will change your like whatever is going on even in your mind, like the irritation that you would experience after these foods would really diminish, right? And then you'd be able to get a better assessment of your state of health. The other thing, Ria, I wanted to talk about is this thing called leaky gut. So that word is very common in the functional medicine arena. People who are studying functional medicine often like say everything is leaky gut.
Yes.
Could you throw some light on what is leaky gut and how that might actually be a problem itself?
So, see, while discussing the gut brain axis, it again becomes important, since we know that most of the brain problems or neurological problems can arise because of a poor gut health. So, what are these conditions? What are these alterations that help you determine that you have a poor gut health? So, before I start talking about leaky gut, also Mugda, there's something called as gut dysbiosis that happens in the first place. So that's a trigger, that's actually a starting point where a person should start focusing on his or her gut health. Because if a gut becomes dysbiotic, you see symptoms, you become bloated, easily bloated. There's bloating for no apparent reason. So some people feel bloated because of, ending up eating a lot of gassy foods. So this bloating is entirely different. This would be, you will be just bloated throughout the day,
And
right?
there'd be like a discomfort and
Yeah,
cramping and
cramp.
pain.
Yes, exactly. There'll be a lot of discomfort. There'll be cramping that you will face, right? And this is it's not normal. People feel that it's normal. It'll go away. They just pop something, suppress symptoms, again end up having these problems. But that's not the solution here. This is the problem that is arising. It means that your microbiome has become imbalanced. So dysbiosis basically mean imbalance in the microbes. So your good ones are on the decline and bad ones have, increased because of, again, some causes that we've already discussed. These poor dietary choices, the foods, inflammatory foods that you consume on a daily basis. So if that gets neglected, it turns into the problem of something called as leaky gut syndrome. So our gut has a protective barrier. So the physiology is so surprising. Every time I read about it or discuss about it, it amazes me that our gut has a protective barrier to protect itself and also our other body parts from the toxins that might enter from our gut. So if this particular barrier gets broken, there is entry of toxins. Basically, there is leaking of toxins via this barrier inside our body, and this is what is called as leaky gut syndrome. So this again would not necessarily show you symptoms related to gut problems, but you will
Yes.
also see extra intestinal symptoms. Like you will see rashes on your skin, you will start getting headaches, like constant headaches. You will start feeling fatigued, right, easily. There will be impact on your sleep that you could also see. So these are
So,
also,
yeah. Sorry,
yeah.
go ahead. I thought you were done.
No, so that is what these are also symptoms that have gotten impact. I mean, occurred in the first place because of poor gut health. So that's again one of the important points to be noted to take care of your gut health when it comes to these problems of dysbiosis and leaky gut syndrome. You were saying, Mugdha.
Yeah, I was saying there is like quite a big correlation between leaky gut and autoimmune conditions also. I'm actually just sharing a
Yes,
couple of
yes,
papers on
yes.
that. Give me 1 minute, I'll just share my screen. So, the first time I heard about leaky gut was when I was researching for my own autoimmune Hashimoto's, right? And that's when I think Dr. Amy Myers, she speaks about it a lot in her books. And that's when I discovered it. I'm just
That
sharing my screen here. So basically, if you see, there have been quite a few studies on it, right? Like leaky gut as a danger signal for autoimmune conditions. So, like Riya explained, what really happens in leaky gut is like the barrier itself
gets
uh,
broken.
becomes more permeable, and things like toxins and bacteria and food particles also start entering the blood itself. And there is so much evidence now to prove that this kind of a situation, right, where your gut lining has become more permeable, it's kind of eroded, can then trigger a whole lot of autoimmune conditions. And that's why one of the things we see again in the work that we do is okay, yeah, so this is a really great image. So
Yes,
basically, this is the
functions. The
tight
barrier.
junctions, right, in your gut. And then if you have leaky gut, these tight junctures actually become permeable, and a lot of stuff from the gut lumen, right, from your gut can actually escape through this and go into your circulation. And once it goes into your circulation, then any organ is like target organ for it. So even with autoimmune thyroid conditions, a lot of thyroid problems stem from leaky gut itself.
Exactly.
So it really is imperative that we understand the role of the gut in both preventing disease and creating disease. Also, here's another
Exactly. A
paper.
very important point that you've brought up, Mugdha. It is really important that we understand the gut physiology first and then go ahead deciding what do we need to do. Because some people, they just feel that it's about only eating fiber that is enough that you can do for your gut health.
Yeah,
And
in fact, in some cases, fiber also can be really
it
harmful,
can
right?
cause problems. Yes,
Yeah,
here in leaky gut only, where
right.
your lining itself has gotten destroyed. If you include a lot of sources of insoluble fiber, it is further going to inflame the lining and lead to bleeding episodes
Yeah.
also.
So this is another paper on that, right? Autoimmune disease when the immune system produces autoantibodies against self antigens. So things that are leaking from your gut going into your bloodstream is something that your system might recognize as an antigen and therefore start attacking itself. And I mean, it's only trying to kind of help you. That's why your system is doing that. But
This response actually emerges out of overworking of our immune system. So
yes,
there is so much entry of toxins in our body that it comes a point that our immune system literally confuses itself
and it's
from
attacking everything.
it starts attacking everything it sees in its way.
Yeah, so leaky gut is something else that I really wanted to talk about, like what is leaky gut and how it can be a cause. Even things like joint pain and all of that, nerve pain can be because of things escaping from the gut. Do you think, Ria, we want to talk about like toxins that the gut flora generate, like infections, and how that can cause disease? That might just get too technical.
I think that might get a bit technical. We can maybe talk about what factors can, cause the barrier to become
Yeah,
permeable,
yeah.
more permeable. So it's not. So of course, poor dietary choices are one of the causes. There are two in particular which I had come across while researching about it. So first is the fructose, the processed fructose, HFCS, that we talk about, high fructose corn syrup, and all the processed fructose items that you eat. This makes your gut, like the permeability. It impacts the permeability big time. And the other factor is the fat, the omega 6 PUFAs coming from these vegetable and seed oils. These two factors in particular are really very I would say the the topmost positive factors when it comes to breaking of the barrier and the permeability of the loosening of the permeability. So these factors I wanted to talk about. And further, if there's leaky gut syndrome, the problem just keep on increasing, right? It further leads to gut inflammation. You start seeing symptoms of bloody diarrhea, and then it can convert into a problem of IBD, that is inflammatory bowel disease, all. Yeah.
Yeah. So the list of diseases then just starts incrementally going
Yes.
up. The more that, see, our gut is supposed to be a place where a lot of integrity is maintained. I mean, I'm not just speaking from like now the physical level, as always, I'll always find a way to put the spiritual into every conversation. But it's really meant to be a place of integrity. Our identity, our survival is really centered around our gut, right? So the minute that integrity starts collapsing, disease starts coming in. Again, with the mental health work and the work we do with clients for like emotional healing, I've seen that people who have a lot of identity crisis or
Hmm.
existential crisis, right? Like where they've come to a point where they don't even know who they are and why they're living the life they're living. They are the ones that have the most number of gut issues, right? Because like the gut is where survival, identity, core beliefs, everything is. And if that itself doesn't have integrity anymore, the system starts collapsing around it. So,
Very
uh,
truly said, and nicely put, Mugdha, because we can see we've just understood the connection. These both are so closely connected. Any change in the gut is going to directly send signals to your brain, and it'll all start collapsing. You will not feel at a place of peace and calm at all.
So how do we heal? Let's say someone has leaky gut, or they at least can like from our talk, they're like assuming it's leaky gut. What are some things that generically people can do in terms of intake? We spoke of what to eliminate, like gluten and all of
Yeah.
that. What can they take in to kind of
Take.
start helping their gut heal, right?
So see, the first thing that would be is to get their gut tested. So that would be the best
Yeah,
way
that's like the
to.
best. But again, there's an investment in that. Most people are so resistant to.
Right. So in general, if you feel that you're suffering from this problem of leaky gut syndrome, what you need to focus on is to how best you can maintain the lining of your gut, because you don't need to. needed to deteriorate even more, right? So stop eating the foods that we just mentioned. That would be the first thing, of course. Second is there are certain important nutrients that actually help in, maintaining the epithelial lining, the integrity of the epithelial lining. So vitamin A is one of them, glutamine is one of them, right? So these two are really important nutrients when it comes to healing the lining of the intestinal epithelium that is getting deteriorated. This was about the nutrients. Of course, when it comes to foods, you can include collagen rich foods. You can
Yeah.
include bone broth. Bone broth
Bone
is
broth
a
is
very
excellent. It's like
excellent when
I,
it
I
comes
think
to.
it's the number one food when it comes to gut healing, right? So
Exactly. You need to also watch your fiber intake a big time. You cannot just go on eating a lot of fiber. In general, also, you cannot go on eating a lot of fiber. That has its negative impacts. But when it comes to this problem of leaky gut and maintaining the gut lining, insoluble sources of fiber are a big no no here. You need to keep away from them. All right, so that would be one of the tips if you feel that you're suffering from this problem of leaky gut syndrome. Watch your sleep. Sleep has a very big impact again on the lining, because the hormone melatonin can is also responsible for the maintenance of the permeability. So if your sleep patterns are not good, melatonin levels are imbalanced, and thereby it can impact the permeability. So sleep is something that you need to watch. Your sun exposure and vitamin D. So both of these go hand in hand. Sun exposure, sun has healing properties. I think Mugdha can put some light here on sun and its healing
I think
properties.
the sun we should bring Rusty because
Oh
he can
yes,
speak for 5 hours about the sun. Uh, but
a
yeah,
lot of benefits. Yeah, that and yeah, maintaining your hydration and keeping yourself physically active. So
moving really helps the gut.
moving really has healing properties. So these would be some of the tips to start with for someone who feels that they have this problem of leaky gut syndrome. So, and you can always bring in probiotics. So
Yeah,
good
but again,
call.
probiotics, if somebody has SIBO and all of that, and if they
Yes,
take a full
that
spectrum probiotic, it can actually make things worse. Like it can
works.
create.
Yes, yes.
So you have to be very careful with
Careful.
probiotics. And,
Tolerance. It's about tolerance when it comes to
and yeah, so that's why supplementation becomes a little bio individual. But I think our probiotic that we make is pretty safe. And for someone who's
Hmm.
testing probiotics for the first time, what we recommend, especially with Ithrice probiotic, because we know all the strains that are there in it, right?
Yes.
So and this is coming from Suya Shuni, like you start off with half a capsule, you see
Yeah.
how your gut tolerates it. And if it's going well, then you could increase the dosage over 2, 3 days. If it feels like too much, then that half also you can make it one fourth, right? And that's how you introduce the good guys into your gut.
So
So
this.
bone broth, low fiber, easy to digest foods, and then like a good quality probiotic and lots of protein, like eggs
Hmm.
and red meat.
Yes.
Because protein is what your body needs to heal itself, right? So that really helps. Again, this is just general advice. If you have specific issues, I would always recommend you come on board for the full 3 month program because that's where we've seen maximum healing
That's
also.
true, even Mugdha, because this needs to be done under guidance. As you mentioned about supplements, and Suyash mentioned about probiotics to be given and look for tolerance. It is true for foods also. So, this is what I usually speak towards the end of my lecture when I talk about the foods for healing the gut. I always tell them that it's all about tolerance, because some people, if they suffer from leaky gut syndrome, might not be intolerant to FODMAPs, but some other people might be intolerant to FODMAPs. So these are some other food categories altogether for the FODMAP rich foods, right? So it's all about tolerance again when it comes to food, and it should be done under guidance after testing what is actually wrong with your gut.
Right. So let's just go to the questions quickly because we're already at 30 minutes.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. So Manali is asking, do you think stimulation of vagus nerve can provide relief to motion sickness? I'll answer that one, Ria. So basically, I've looked this up, like how much can vagus nerve stimulation really help someone, right? And the only experiments that have been like conducted with as a study so far include transdermal vagal nerve stimulation, right? And there is, so what happens in motion sickness is it's usually visually induced. Like the movement around you and your body's movement, there's a mismatch, and like if you're reading something or if you're like looking at a laptop
Hmm.
or a screen, it gets worse. So transdermal vagal nerve stimulation has apparently helped in some cases, but we can't like put devices inside our body for the motion sickness. So I don't have an answer to your question, Manali. Maybe we can do a research paper on that itself. But I do think like maybe this kind of vagal nerve stimulation or the one that I teach in my academy module, na, where we use eyes and all to kind of activate the vagus nerve, maybe that can help with motion sickness. The next time I travel to Bombay, I will induce motion sickness by reading something and then I'll see if vagal nerve stimulation helps. Okay, so I'll be the test subject for this. Um, okay, Shagun has a question. What is the root cause behind anxiety induced diarrhea?
Induced diarrhea. Yeah,
Do you want
again, see,
to?
yeah, I'll take this one. So the root cause behind anxiety induced diarrhea is again things going wrong with your microbes, right? Your microbes basically they start getting destroyed, and this anxiety maybe in the first place was because something got wrong with your gut microbiome or your gut, and this diarrhea was a result of something you ate. So like it can be because of that. Anxiety induced diarrhea again can be a hormonal change or the neurotransmitter change that these microbes they bring about. So it's all about again the imbalance in your gut microbes, and gut dysbiosis can be a root cause here, if that
Could
answers your
the other thing I've seen there is see one of the stress responses, right? Like when the HPA axis gets
question.
activated, or even the SAM, like the sympathetic adrenomedullary axis or the HPA axis, when they get activated, one of the body's response mechanism to both adrenaline and cortisol is the change in like the entire GI system. For some
Hmm.
people,
Hmm.
chronic stress actually creates constipation and those
Constipation.
issues. For some people, acute anxiety, right? Like that amount of energy. And generally, anxiety is like a fear driven emotion. So, that fear coming in when the stress response has gotten activated, that can cause the bowel to kind of just open up
So,
and trigger diarrhea.
can you say, Mugdha, that the gut brain connection that we were talking about, so that has caused your brain to send signals to your digestive system to either over function or under function. Can we
Yeah,
say
it is really that because the brain is what is perceiving a threat, right, from
that?
the
Right.
environment. So,
Hmm.
assuming this is not driven by the gut microbiome, this is entirely driven by an emotional threat or like an actual
Hmm.
physical threat or some kind of a future driven, like
Hmm.
somebody told you like your job is going to go off or something like that, right? Like
Right.
actually
Right.
a perceived threat coming in from the environment. Often like the response is either like shut
Either
down or over function.
all
And
right.
like I because I observe like where else is this which other species, like if you look at animals, right, like cats and dogs, like I have not been able to observe lions and tigers in close quarters, but since humans have created the ability to domesticate cats and dogs, I've seen this, like usually when a cat or a dog gets scared, their body actually like there's both urination and defecation that happens in animals.
Okay.
Even
Hmm.
like if you honk very loudly in the night, na, so that is a natural bodily response. And like this is a little bit of my hypothesis, but I think if you look at ancestrally, right, like at the moment of stress, maybe your body is like some, like if you look at an animal's defecatory pattern, it actually puts off predators, it puts off anything that might be attracted there,
Hmm.
right? Like the smell and all of that creates a little disgust. It kind of it's a warning mechanism, it's a territorial marking mechanism. So I wonder how much of human behavior is also coming from that ancestral behavior where you're just using your bodily material to kind of create disgust around you so that come closer. Is my stream okay? Because I
Uh,
think
it was breaking a bit.
yeah, yeah. So I think it's that also there is like an evolutionary response to the entire diarrhea that might happen because of anxiety. But definitely, what cortisol does is it relaxes your system also, right? Like contracts and relaxes, and that's why there could be a possibility of diarrhea happening out of anxiety. Okay. Ria, you're frozen.
Am I? Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but you're frozen. All right, going to the next question. Um, you can hear and see, right? Like,
Ah, yes, yes, yes. That's actually a really good question. I would want to take it up, Mugdha.
yeah, sure.
So the question is, Ranudeep is asking about the barrier becoming
Right.
leaky, just as our gut, and the ways to test it. So yes, the brain also has a barrier, just like our gut has, to protect itself from the toxins that might enter. So the barrier is actually protecting both our neurotransmitters and neurons. Okay, so if this barrier gets destroyed, so there are again reasons for it. The blood brain barrier. So the answer to your initial question would be yes, Ranodeep. The blood brain barrier can also become leaky, and it can result into a problem called leaky brain. Just like leaky gut syndrome, it results into a problem of leaky brain, where the barrier gets destroyed and toxins enter your brain now. And specific ways to test it, I haven't come across. Have you come across anything for testing the toxins in the
No,
brain? What
I
I
don't
have heard
know.
about is liver dysfunctions, basically due to the increased toxin content in the brain. So
So liver panel will show us, and if you
yes,
do a OAT test, right, like the advanced test, that the organic acid test, that will tell us like if there is toxicity. Uh, like that's for the overall blood. That's not really a
for
functional
just
test
for
for,
the
yeah,
yes,
the blood-brain barrier.
barrier.
But maybe like if you check the cerebrospinal fluid, like you do a
Yes,
spinal
yes.
tap and you check the cerebrospinal fluid, and maybe if you find toxins or like
I
bacteria and contaminants there.
I also think, Mugdha, since Suyash just attended the conference in Goa that was entirely around toxins and testing, right? So if we
Yeah.
can like do a live and extract some answers out of him.
Yes, for sure. Extracting knowledge everywhere we go. I think I will do. He was talking about doing that, but I don't really know of a like a test that will tell
Hmm.
us if there's a blood-brain barrier issue. Like with the gut, like leaky gut, you can still test for markers, right? Like your even
Yes,
in the GI map, we see calprotectin and then secretory IgA and then like even zonulin. Some
Jonulin, yes.
places it's been said. I think Johan has something to say about zonulin, though. He once told me that it's not like actually a really great marker. I don't
Hmm.
remember why though. But a lot of people use zonulin for testing.
I think, Mugdha, when it comes to brain, you can see very quick symptoms also, disorientation and stuff like that. But again, there has to be a way of
I'd like to get a lot of people tested for the blood-brain barrier, especially since 2020.
true, like cannot rely on symptoms.
All right, there's a question from Charu. She's asking, please suggest some good books and papers to read on gut health and nutrition. And there's the same question from Shalini also. Please suggest
Wanted
some
to read more about gut health and what will be the
good
good
resources.
resources. The one resource would be you can join the course, of course, because
I know.
it's important to learn about the other aspects along with the gut microbiome and the gut health, right? And coming to the books, so I know of this book named Healthy Gut, Healthy You, which is
Mm.
by Dr. Mark Ruscio. It's a good book and it has quite good information on how. So the book, the name itself
Yeah,
suggests
but I
that.
think like if you look at how many things we've studied to really understand the gut, it's not like
Yeah,
one
the
book.
one book is just not
You have
enough
to know
for.
about food, and then you have to learn about food. Now, in food, you have to learn about things like anti-nutrients, lectins, oxalates, and how they can impact the gut. Then you have to learn about stress and the entire HPA axis and all of that to
Absolutely,
know
yes.
about the impact on gut. Then you have to know like even if you have like nothing happening in the gut, but your thyroid has been impacted because of something that can cause
That
gut
can
issues.
in turn impact your gut because again there's
Or,
a bidirectional axis. So
or
this
your liver, right? Like
this gut brain axis is one thing that we can discuss about when it comes to importance of gut. It has impacts on the overall health. So just reading one book or certain research papers would not
exactly.
take you there.
Right, so we are not really just we're not plugging in the academy, but
Yes, yes.
honestly, like, if you want to really learn and like understand the gut from so many different
Holistic.
perspectives, from knowing the anatomy itself, from knowing the nutrients that really help with the gut, you'll probably take 3 4 years to really go through all the material that is there, and then in the academy we're teaching it in 4 months, right? So it really is to make your life simpler for you to understand gut health better.
So all the 3 4 years ka research put in the 4 months course.
Yeah, and it's not even 3 4. It's let's say 5 years of my research, 10 years of
Johan's research.
Johan's been researching this for the last 5 6 years. That's already 10 years. You've been researching this for 5 6 years, so that's 15. So Yash or
10.
15 Joto. So I think totally cumulatively we have Padma Shri has been like doing this for so
Oh my
long,
god,
right?
that's the highest.
So Padma Shri has the highest score. So if you put the cumulative research, it's like nearly 20 25 years of research gone together into a 4 month course. So that's why it's better. But if you still want to read a book and not sign up the course, then the book that Ria recommended is something
Yeah,
that you
it's
can look at, right?
healthy gut, healthy you. If you want to, like, just for starters, read about the importance of gut health, you can do that.
All right, so I think we'll end now. We are already
Alright,
like 40 minutes and really great questions today. And for those of you who are here for the live, thank you so much for being here. For those of you watching this later, I hope you learned something new from this.
true.
And next week, I don't know what we're doing, but we'll be back every Tuesday at 4 p.m. The iThrive team will bring their knowledge here for you guys. All right, chalo.
Thank
Bye bye.